Okay folks, we've been doing lots of videos dealing with right triangles, and now we're going to finally put it all together and see what it means to solve a right triangle. Okay, and simply what solving a right triangle means is finding all the information. Okay, so all the side lengths and all the angle measures that consist and make up that triangle. So we're just going to work out an example, and we're going to talk about the process. So it doesn't matter what pieces of information you start with. You should be able to solve a right triangle if given enough information from any starting point. So, for example, as long as we know it's a right triangle and we have two pieces of information, we can solve everything. So I want to find every side length and both angle measures. And for the sake of this example, let's say that we're given that the hypotenuse is 9 units and this leg here is 6 units. Okay, so now I want to find this angle. Let's label our angles. Let's call this angle A and this angle B. Okay, and then side length A. And so those, with every right triangle, we know the right angle. So there are always 1, 2, 3 side lengths we need to know, and 1, 2 angles. So 3 plus 2, 5 pieces of information. As long as we're given these two, any two, we can find the other 3. So we want to find side length A and angle A and angle B. Well, there's a bunch of ways we can go about this, but for sake of practice, let's go about it in not necessarily the most efficient way. So first things first, let's find angle or side length A. We can do this by finding the Pythagorean theorem, using the Pythagorean theorem. So we know that A squared plus the other leg, 6 squared, is equal to 9 squared. So A squared plus 6 squared will be 36 equals 9 squared, which is 81. So A squared is equal to 81 minus 36, or 45. So A is going to equal the square root of 45. And for the sake of keeping this as accurate as possible, I'm not going to round this answer to a decimal. But so now we have this piece of information. We know that A equals the square root of 45. Okay, so now we want to find little a and little b angle measures. Okay, so now to solve for angle A, we're going to use a trig ratio. Okay, and since we know these two side lengths, we know this side length is the square root of 45, this big A, but let's just use what we started with originally. Okay, so for solving for angle A, side length 6 is going to be the adjacent side, and side length of value 9, this is the hypotenuse. So we know that the trig ratio that uses both the adjacent side and the hypotenuse is going to be our cosine. So we start with cosine of A equals adjacent, or 6 over hypotenuse, which is 9. Okay, so now we have cosine of A equals, and 6 over 9 is going to reduce to 2/3. Okay, and I've written it like this because we know now that we need to take the inverse cosine of each side. Cosine inverse, cosine inverse. Okay, and we're left with A equals cosine inverse of 2/3. And again, we're going to have to use a calculator to find this, and we'll find that A is just about 48.190. Okay, so back over here on A, we're going to write A equals 48.190. That's that angle measure. So now, of course, we have two methods for finding the angle measure of B. We could just subtract it from 90, but to demonstrate our purposes, let's consider using trig ratios again. So 6 in relation to angle B, this side length, this leg, is the opposite side. So we're dealing with the opposite, and of course this is the hypotenuse. So opposite and hypotenuse will be sine. So we write sine of angle B is going to be 6/9. Now likewise to how we just solved for angle A, we're going to need an inverse. So I'm going to write sine inverse of sine of B equals the sine inverse, anything you do to one side you must do to the other, of 6/9 of 2/3. Okay, and then we are left with B equals the sine inverse of 2/3. And we'll find that B is equal to 40, or approximately, I shouldn't say equal to, 41.810. Okay, and we can see that this must be right because 41.810 plus 48.190, both of those are rounding, but you can see that those will add up to equal 90, which is what we expect. Okay, now we have solved for all pieces of information, and that is how you solve a right triangle.